1 reaction, 6 ability updates, 43 fighters, 35 new abilities, and 69 points updates. That's the content of the latest FAQ for Warcry from Games Workshop, and I'm not gonna lie, there are a few questions there. Other people have already brought it up about how there are a couple of discrepancies, there are some strange editing choices, let's say, and there are some downright errors. So what we're going to do today is I'm going to go through those frequently asked questions for the frequently asked questions document, an FAQ on an FAQ as it would be. I'm going to try and answer those to the best of my abilities and hopefully give you a little bit more clarity if you have any questions about the update. If you have any questions that I have not covered here, what I urge you to do, put it in the comments down below and I'll get back to them and I will give my answers. We're getting there. Slowly and surely. Yeah, I know things have been a bit slow recently, but I'm doing my best here to put out stuff for you. What I wanted to do is I wanted to say a big thank you for everyone who continues to support the channel and continues to support the work that we do here to try and push out these games to more and more people. For you guys who have not yet done so, if you like what you see, please give me a subscribe, give me a like, and put a comment down in the comment section below about what you think about this video. For you guys who want to throw some more support my way, you can check me out on Patreon, you can become a YouTube member, you can join my Discord. All links for that are going to be down in the comment section below. But again, even if you don't want to, thank you for everyone. Let's carry on, let's make it a great 2025. But for now, let's get back to the video. So first up, there are a couple of abilities that don't really make sense in terms of the rune marks. The rune marks just seem to be flat out wrong. We're going to start with the Emberwatch. The Emberwatch has an ability, your duty remains undone Farsha. Basically, it's a resurrect, and the idea is that Farsha can come back to life. Now, the problem is that the rune mark that's currently on this ability is the champion rune mark, and Farsha has that rune mark, but if Farsha is dead, she's not on the battlefield, so she isn't able to use the ability to bring herself back. So the common consensus on this one is that it's actually supposed to be the hero rune mark. That way, the leader, she gets to use the ability and summon Farsha back onto the battlefield. Next up, we have the Jaws of Itzl. We have Dedicated Guardian. Now, Dedicated Guardian is the ability that allows Sokar and Krotak to basically guard Krojax. And that's really what it's designed for. It's supposed to be a little bit like what Storm Vermin can do. They can use the ability, it's on a double, and then your opponent cannot target that fighter. Now, the problem is they have attributed it to the Warrior rune mark. The Warrior rune mark is what allows Jaws of Itzl, Sora specifically, to be able to use Tearing Bite. But the problem is they're all warriors because they're all Sora, they can all use Tearing Bite. So, rules as written, Krojax allows to use Dedicated Guardian on himself and basically make him untargetable on a double. Now, obviously, that isn't supposed to be the case. What Sokar and Krotak also have is the Bulwark rune mark, and that is unique to them. So the common consensus there is that Dedicated Guardian is supposed to be on Bulwark. This allows them to function as they're supposed to. You bring Krojax, you bring one of the other two, they can use the double. If they're close enough, Krojax can survive. In terms of the actual obvious rune mark errors that are in there, that's basically it. Now, there are a few fighters who have extra rune marks. I'm thinking specifically of Galen Van Denst. He has a bonus rune mark. I think it's a Terrifying rune mark, or it might be one of the other ones, but it has no ability attributed to it. Now, there are a couple of reasons for this. It may well be that he was supposed to have an additional ability, or he was supposed to have another rune mark, or something else happened. For now, he kind of functions as he is. One of the main questions around Galen Van Denst is that he is 10 points more than Haskell Hexbane, but he has the same stats as Haskell Hexbane. That's why people kind of think that his additional rune mark does mean something, but for now, it basically doesn't mean anything until maybe there's going to be another update. I don't know, by Games Workshop that clarifies that. If it removes a rune mark, if it adds an ability, we don't know for the time being. But as it is at the moment, you just bring Galen. He costs 10 points more than Haskell. My pet idea is that Haskell, being a Bladeborn and unique, is undercosted, not by much, for the stats he brings to the table. 125 points for toughness 4 and 20 wounds with decent range profile, decent melee profile is very good. So I guess the idea is that if you bring Galen and you bring Haskell, you kind of split the points difference between them. Haskell becomes like 5 points more expensive, Galen becomes 5 points cheaper, and overall the points cost that you're paying is a little bit fairer. But that's just my speculation. In reality, it doesn't have any effect. There are also a number of common questions that people have been asking, and we're going to go through them. So the first is about Immolation. So Pyregeist's got a brand new reaction called Immolation, where they can make a reaction when they're targeted by melee attack action. If the attack has enough damage to take them down, they can cremate themselves. The problem is that if you're looking at the mechanism of how cremate works, what cremate does is just remove the fighter from the battlefield. It doesn't mention that they're taken down. It doesn't mention they die or anything like that. So rules as written, when they take enough damage to die, they react, they are removed from the battlefield, and you place the Pyre token. Now, normally you'd think, why is this an issue? The main problem is that because it does not specify that the fighter has been taken down, any victory condition that requires taken down fighters, they basically don't count, because officially they're not taken down, and there's nothing in the core rules that says, oh, if a fighter leaves the battlefield for whatever reason, they count as taken down. That doesn't exist, so as written, none of that happens. In addition, there are other consequences to this. If you have an ability, let's say Might Makes Right, for example, which requires a fighter using an attack action to take down an opposing fighter, that basically won't work, because it's not Might Makes Right that has taken down the fighter, it would be the reaction, but the reaction doesn't even take down the fighter in the first place. So it turns off a whole bunch of those additional on death, if you kill the thing style abilities. Now, there is a precedent for this. I mean, for reactions not triggering those abilities. If we look at Split, what Split does, we're talking about Demons of Tzeentch, when the fighter takes its melee attack action, you can choose to split. You remove the fighter from the battlefield, you place the new fighter, and then that fighter that was already there is taken down. Now, Immolation is missing that wording, so the way we are playing it is that Immolation does take down the fighter, so it will count for things like mission objectives that require you to take down things, but like Split, it does not count as your opponent taking them down with the melee attack action. It will be the reaction killing, so it will not proc things like Might Makes Right. That's the way we're playing it at the moment, but it really does need a clarification, because as written, the fighter just basically disappears. Next question talks about the new fighters that have been added. So we're talking about the new Warhammer Underworlds fighters here, and the question is, do they count as Bladeborn for purposes of allies and all the additional Bladeborn rules? The answer is no. The reason for that is when you look at the entries of these fighters, it just says, and I'm going to put the Grandfather's Gardeners reference up on the stage, it just says add those fighter profiles to the respective warband. It doesn't talk about Bladeborn, it doesn't talk about allies or anything like that. So, as written, all of these fighters are not Bladeborn, so if you ally in the leader, you cannot add in the rest of their warband for basically no allies. What you can do is you can ally in the leader to other places, but the way they've written these warbands, it kind of suggests that they don't want them to be included in other warbands anyway. They all seem to be self-contained. There aren't many of them that have abilities that just basically help everybody. I think this is really a push for Games Workshop to curtail not the ubiquitous nature of Bladeborn, but rather make it a little bit easier for them to actually be able to balance them. Because as written, there are plenty of Bladeborn warbands, and we've seen them, right? We've seen things like the Starblood Stalkers basically turn up in every and any Order warband simply because they are cheaper chaff than other ones that you might get within your faction. And I guess Games Workshop doesn't want to do this, so they've taken away that ability. The next question is talking about Ritual of Prophecy. Ritual of Prophecy has 3 abilities to it, and they're specifically talking about the third effect. So we're going to pick one of the prophecy effects to apply to the fighter, and then reset your prophecy points to 0. The third effect is that you're going to allocate your prophecy points evenly between attacks, strength, and both values of damage characteristic of their melee weapon. And then you add 1 for each prophecy point allocated to it. And the question associated with that is, when you are adding to your damage characteristic values, are you adding to one individually, so hit and crit, or are you just adding to your damage characteristics, or add one to your hit and crits combined? As written, because there is no comma in between any of this, and it's kind of strangely written, it kind of indicates that it would add one to both your hit and your crit damage values. Now, in terms of is this strong or is this not strong, adding one to your hit and crit is basically worse than adding to your attacks. And it's kind of worse to adding to your strength in certain situations. So I have absolutely no problem for this thing to basically go, okay, I have 3 prophecy points. I'm going to get +1 attack, +1 strength, and +1 hit and crit. I have no problems with that. That's the way I'm going to be playing it. But just be aware that it is open to interpretation, where you might want to add to one or not the other. Have a conversation with your opponent beforehand. Have a conversation with the TO if you're using this warband specifically. The next question, we are going to be talking about Zikkit's Tunnelpack, and we're going to be talking about Tick. Does Tick follow the rules for resurrecting fighters? The answer to that is very simple. The answer is no, because if you read the ability, if your Tick is taken down and is listed on your warband roster, you set up a friendly Tick within 1 inch of this fighter, and that Tick cannot move this turn. It does not follow the wording for any of the other resurrect abilities. It's just a flat setup. Again, there are examples for this already in the game. If we look at Split again, what we're going to be doing is setting up 2 new fighters with the Tzeentch Demons faction rune mark and warrior rune mark on the battlefield. Because it uses the wording setup, it is not a resurrect, so the thing can act normally in the turn that it comes on. And in addition, it puts bonus stipulations on that basically says that tick cannot move this turn. So it can activate, it can wait, it can use its ability to explode if it's already close enough when it comes back to life, but it cannot move. So I think that one's pretty simple. Finally, what we have is a number of, I want to say, hidden points errors. Normally, when you're looking at the points value of all the stuff that's changed, you're going to look at it, see what's in magenta, and it's going to have a delta value, which is the amount that it's changed by. Now, there are some fighters in this list that have points values that are different from their actual points value, so the points value that we have today, but haven't been included in purple and don't have a delta, a change on their points. So this leads me to believe that those are actually errors. How do I know this? I think the main reason, well, we've got the Mutilith Vortex Beast, for example, is listed in the FAQ as being 245 points, where it blatantly isn't, it's 425 points. And then on top of that, we have the Ardboy with Chopper, which has been said in the FAQ that it should be 85 points, when in reality, it's 100 points, and the 85 points was actually referring to, I think, 2 FAQs ago, before the Ardboys got their update in the September update. There are a list of these fighters. I have compiled a list of them here, which you're going to see on the screen. It's very possible that there are more, but as a general rule of thumb, what I know tournaments in the UK are going to be doing anyway, because I've chatted to Demetrios and this is what he wants to do, anything that is not in purple, or partially in purple, in the case of the Brute Boss with Boss Chopper and the Brute Boss with Boss Claw and Boss Smasher, those points should basically be disregarded. There are a whole bunch of just weird points in there. Like I said, the Ardboys, the Mutilith Vortex Beasts, the Briar Queen has had like weird points changes, gone down to 185 when it's currently 195 for no real reason. Kixie Taka, the FAQ says it's 145, but the real points is 130. It used to be some other kind of cost, but like it just basically keeps on changing. And there's no real reason for those points changes to be in there, in my view, especially considering that they have not been highlighted by Games Workshop. Like I said, this is a list that I found. It's possible that there are other fighters. Check them out, but as a general rule of thumb, if they're not purple, they're probably not real. I'm hoping that Games Workshop are going to release some kind of emergency update or FAQ or whatever to this. Maybe with Horns of Hashut, maybe that's something that they can fix then, because Horns should be coming fairly soon. Yeah, and hopefully that will all be cleared up. That's basically it in terms of the questions that we have so far that the community have been asking. There are a bunch of other things, like minor things like clarifications on how things work, where what rules as written say might not necessarily kind of chime with how you think an ability might work. But for the most part, those abilities just work as they are. If the model is worse or better or whatever because of that, that's just how it is. But like I said, there's been a lot of updates reactions, abilities, 43 fighters with 35 new abilities, 69 proper points updates. So it's possible that things may have crept in there. It's possible that during editing, maybe some files were crossed. We don't know. But for you guys, like I said, if you have any other questions that I have not covered here, stick them down in the comments. I will get back to them and I'll give them my best stab. But yeah, that's it for today. Thank you very much for watching and I will see you next time.